Are you and your dog struggling with reactivity? You're not alone. The good news is that we've created a completely new approach to managing your dog's reactivity, and it's available for you and your dog right now. Go to positively.com, click Take a Course, and choose Help Stop Reactivity to enroll in this game-changing online course for you and your dog today. That's positively.com. And now, on to the podcast. In 2019, before 2019, in 2017, I came up with the idea for a new television show. Now, in 2005, It's Me or the Dog was born, and that was a show created by me, a jobbing trainer in Manhattan, that really wanted a vehicle, a way of showing people, actually, there are loads of things that you can do, loads of teaching and behavior stuff that you can do with your dogs to keep your dogs in homes, right? So I wanted that to be on a big platform. And of course, It's Me or the Dog was the result of that desire. Then in 2017, I became really fascinated about the different jobs that dogs could do for us. And so I created another television show. It was called Dogs with Extraordinary Jobs. And I asked Oxford Scientific Films, an amazing production company in the UK that publishes a lot, or does a lot of UK centric, but actually they film around the world, but a lot of their shows are shown on the UK and some on Animal Planet here, including Meerkat Manor, if you've heard of that. With Oxford Scientific Films, we created Dogs with Extraordinary Jobs. And we went around the world filming stories of dogs doing incredible things. Now, we know a lot of the different types of jobs that dogs do. But did you ever hear about the Jack Russell Terrier that is a nanny dog to baboons in Africa? Have you heard about the Malinois in South Africa that locate a particular species of tortoise that are on the brink of extinction? Have you heard about the Labradors and the German Shepherds that help stop an invasive species of mussel invading the lakes in Canada? Well, my next guest, she knows all about this kind of work because she does it herself. And I think you're going to find her absolutely fascinating. She has been a faculty advisor with VSA for years and years and years. Her name is Melissa McCue-McGrath, and she is going to talk to us today about how pet dogs are extraordinary too, because they can do this stuff. So if you'd ever thought about, well, that's fine for those dogs, but my dog couldn't do that, well, think again, because she might tell you different. So welcome, Melissa, to the show.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. And as you were listing off all those dogs, I was thinking of all these other dogs, like the ones who protect the little penguin, this endangered species in Australia, and like all of these other dogs that do these really cool jobs. Like, this is just something I'm super fascinated and passionate about.
It is amazing. And, a friend of mine, when she knew that I was researching this, she said, hey, I'm on a boat right now, and this boat there's a dog on here, and they're trying to locate a particular species of dolphin.
Oh,
it's quite a rare dolphin, but again, the species is under threat.
Okay.
And she said, maybe you could come and film a story down in Australia. And I was like, oh my gosh, we'd love to be in Australia, but actually we don't have the budget. So, but we did, however, go to Seattle and the San Juan Islands to film a dog that did something similar to locate whale scat of the orca
This
whale.
was the orca whale, the dog Tucker, right?
Yes. So we filmed with that organization, and so I learned a lot, everything from truffle finding dogs to invasive species dogs. And you, Melissa, apart from all the work you do as a pet dog trainer, and now all the work that you are doing, helping people train pet dogs to do similar things, all the work you do as a faculty advisor, this is something that I'd love you to share with our listeners.
I'm so excited. um, so in 20, actually in 2020, the year that kept on giving, I
Right.
had started my own podcast, actually very similar in scope to that show you were talking about, all these fantastic jobs that animals do, like bees who are trained to find bomb residue in Croatia and rats who can find malaria, things like that. And a lot of them were also dogs, but like these unusual animals that we train to do things to help us as humans. Um, and I would also put in these silly intersections of animals and humanity. And one of them was in Pennsylvania in I want to say 2022. Apiarists, bee people, had discovered that their honeybees were producing this super dark honey. It looked almost like car oil. And so they were tasting it. It kind of had this smoky flavor to it. It was safe to eat. It tasted good, but they couldn't figure out what was going on with with this honey. And so they sent out the scientists who did their scientist thing, and they discovered that the bees were actually taking this thing called honeydew off of lanternfly eggs. And I'll go into that part in a minute because that's what we're training these dogs to find, are spotted lanternfly, an invasive species. But the honeydew is basically like, the best way to describe it is not pleasant. It's basically like mom lanternfly vomit that protects the eggs, and it looks like mud spatter. So it's really hard to see and tell the difference between that and just like gunk on a tree. But the bees had found it because it's sweet. And then they were bringing that back to the hive and they were making honey out of it, which, yep, that's the right taste to make. And I will say I purchased some and I tried it and it was quite good if I just wasn't thinking about how it was made.
With lanternfly vomit.
The lanternfly vomit. It was the honey made from it.
The honey made from it. Yes, it's not the actual, but yeah. No, that's kind of off-putting. That's kind of off-putting.
They shouldn't use that as part of their marketing label. Let's just put it that way. So, but it was good. And it tasted very smoky. It was cool. So I did a story on these bees and the spotted lanternfly. And one of my listeners happened to be plugged into the science world and was like, hey, these researchers from Virginia Tech and Texas Tech are trying to combat this invasion of the spotted lanternfly. Now, listeners in 18 of the U.S. states will know exactly what this is, and the rest of the listeners are going to be like, I've never heard of this. Did you hear about this before
I've heard about the lanternfly, but I was just in a passing on social media, just in passing. So okay. I really know very little about it.
Great. So now I can be super nerdy about it because I get super into
nerdy.
It. So
this is the podcast to be nerdy on.
I am very excited about this. So, I mean, not the invasion, but what we did. So Virginia Tech and Texas Tech had decided they were going to try to get creative in trying to sort out this issue of the spotted lanternfly. Now, the spotted lanternfly came in as an invasive in 2014 into Pennsylvania first, probably on a shipping container, and probably on another invasive, which was a tree of heaven, which is also an invasive. So the tree of heaven starts to pollinate and do its thing and grow in places in Pennsylvania, and with it come this spotted lanternfly. The issue with spotted lanternfly, more so than something like an emerald ash borer, which we have here in Maine, the emerald ash borer only attacks ash trees. So it's that's an ash tree. I can go find it. I can check to see if there's an invasion. Spotted lanternfly takes out every crop it comes in contact with because of that honeydew. And it attracts a black sooty mold that decimates crops. So here in Maine, what makes that particularly challenging is so much of our industry is environmentally based. Tourism, of course, but also like maple trees. We have a huge, just about 6 weeks ago, we had Maple Fest weekend where every farm in the entire state opens up their doors to sell maple and maple-like things. Stone fruit, apple trees, hardwood. So if you're in lumber and construction, that wood will get more expensive if this happens in your state. I believe they said it was over 70 crops could be affected by this because of it's not that the bug is sucking the life force out of these crops. It's that what it leaves behind attracts this black mold. And one researcher likened it to looking like scorched earth without the fire. And after seeing pictures of this, it was very impactful. And so these two universities had decided that they would get all of the smartest people they had at these universities together to try to come up with some creative solutions. So they had forensic botanists, they had horticulture people, they had, and this is out of my lane, I don't know who works in plant stuff, but like all these plant smart people. And then they also got together some of the dog people and animal behaviorists and canine researchers. And one canine researcher in particular, oh my gosh, Sally Dickinson, I almost forgot her name, and I would have been so embarrassed.
I've heard of her name, actually.
Sally Dickinson. She does a lot with, she has, I believe they're cadaver searchers, dogs.
Right,
she does a lot. She's been kind of around more recently.
Okay.
So I met her through this, and then I saw her kind of on the outskirts doing these other things with scent work and stuff. So she was my point contact. They put out a call in April 23 to, in the way that they do, and they kind of opened up a Zoom meeting to have this informational thing. They were looking specifically for competitive nose work instructors and people who have worked with working dogs. The hypothesis that they were trying to get to and explore was, can we train pet dogs to find invasion? And so they put that out there, but I realized they were competitive nosework people and people who have a background in working dogs, which I don't. I have not been in competition in that way, and I haven't ever done working dog stuff. So I thought we'd be kind of eliminated, but I still put our name forth anyway. And they paired us with 6 other dogs who happened to be my students in scent work.
Wow.
Most of my students come to me, though, because of behavior. I'm a behavior consultant up here, and I tend to see, for 20 years working in Boston, almost every single case I had was behavioral in some way. I've been invited to speak actually in your growing up country. I got to go to the UK and speak about urban dogs and training and how that can be a challenge, and addressing behavior in that way. And, so I kind of had this reputation of being like the use scent work to kind of fix it person. So we didn't think, when November came, and went and we still hadn't heard anything, that we were ever going to get picked. And 3 days after my students asked, hey, are we going to do this thing? I'm like, I guess not. I got an email from Sally saying you were picked. Oh. And I was really surprised because, again, like I said, I work in behavior. I don't have a background in any competition, for scent work. And all my dogs are behavior dogs. So these were not the dogs that they were initially looking for, but I was pleased as punch that they picked us because this was going to be really cool.
That makes me smile. Congratulations to begin.
Thank you.
That just makes me feel so good, especially the fact that your dogs, these aren't the dogs that you would think would be able to do this because of their maybe their background, their history, and their behavior that they're exhibiting, right? Yeah. So there's some compromise there.
Yeah, and one of the dogs was actually sort of in competition. Like the handler has done some like agility stuff with her, but that was really it. The other 5 had some sort of either dog reactivity, which was my dog, or one had separation anxiety that was so severe the owners were basically trapped in their home. Like another just really hates kids and strangers and really needs a lot of advocacy to keep him feeling safe. So we were kind of like, I felt like in those movies where they have the ragtag group of kids that show up to the sporting event and they're like in the wrong uniform and like, but they're there to play, they try their best. and then they win. That's kind of what I felt like we were in this study.
I'm so excited. I know this is a podcast, but I'm cheering. Oh my gosh, I love movies like that. I mean, you know how it's going to end up, but you just love it because these are the kids that like everybody is just they're not part of the cool crowd. They're not part, but something extraordinary happens. Or they're the people that, they're not great golfers, but they are. And then they go and beat everybody who's like grown up playing golf and all fancy schmancy. And this raggle-taggle group comes and they win. I mean, things like that are just wonderful. So you've got this fabulous group of dogs that all different issues. Love it.
Yeah, and they were so funny because one of my favorite photos that I put up in the slideshow that I give, I have an hour-long presentation that I give on these dogs and the work that they did. So I show a picture of the competition dogs from one of the groups, I believe in Seattle or New Jersey or something, and they're all standing in a straight line. They have all their dogs, and everyone is precise, and they're all looking at the camera. And they're like inches apart from each other. And then there's our we did it photo, and we're all like 15 feet apart from each other. We look this big, and it just says we did it.
Oh my God. It's the best. I feel like this is like a thing of my life, right? I do. I just feel it. I don't know. This is brilliant, Melissa. Okay, carry on.
Yeah. So, yeah. what part would you like to know about?
I just want to know how you did it then.
So in January, so keep in mind, I live in Maine. It gets very cold and snowy here.
Yes.
And so they sent me an envelope that was, I don't know, it was a large envelope with dead fly eggs in mesh, like metal mesh packets. And I had to distribute those to my students. So like a totally normal person, I drive around the state of Maine with a Pokémon lunchbox because that's what I had available because I have kids, and with an ice pack, and I'm dropping off these fly eggs to my students at their place of work because the first day we were supposed to have our class to learn how to do this.
Wow.
There was a blizzard. So the day before we decided, okay, we'll do it on Zoom and I'll get you this stuff. So the 2020 stuff still came in very helpful for our first class, which was snowed out.
I can just, I mean, this is just getting better and better. I can just picture
really
what would happen. It was
a comedy of errors.
Yeah, truly. If you would have been stopped by the police and you're like, actually, officer, no, did you? You didn't get stopped by the police.
I wasn't stopped by the police, but there was a school resource officer because two of my students worked at an elementary school.
No. Okay. So you say, well, actually, I'm delivering. No.
I've got my little lunchbox and I go in. Actually, I only had 5 dogs at this time. This is where I get the 6th dog and a very awkward conversation with the resource officer. So for those who are not American, or live and have kids in American schools, frequently you will have a police officer stationed at a school to keep them safe or whatever.
Yes. We had police officers at my daughter's school. Yep.
Yeah, it's America, and that I guess is the only explanation I need to give. So I walk in, and the woman at the front desk, I recognize her as one of my students. And I'm like, oh, Mary, what are you doing here? She goes, I work here. I'm like, oh, can you get this to Emily, one of the first grade teacher who was in the study? And it's like this like little mesh thing. And she's like, is this for the lanternfly stuff? Can I do it too? And I did not check with the scientist. I'm just like, sure. And I gave her one too. I'm like, we're going on Zoom tomorrow. I'll send you the stuff. She's like, okay. And then I let the researchers know I picked up a 6th student. So as I'm walking out, there's this resource officer. I do not have children in this school. I've got a lunchbox and I'm carrying something that looks vaguely metal. And he's like, ma'am. And I'm like, it's for science.
Did you explain what it's for?
I tried.
Did you explain what it actually was?
Excuse me. Yeah, he didn't really ask a lot of follow-up questions. I just said it's for science, and he's like, okay. But I just go like skipping off to my car. But yeah, but there was that moment of, am I am I gonna have to really explain this and prove it, because this just looks weird?
Yeah. Yes. Fabulous. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
As
So
soon
this
as
is,
you
do you
said
know,
police
we've got
officer.
this is like a little movie, right? This is just pure. This is fabulous. Okay. Okay, we need to do a reenactment of this. In the next Dogs with Extraordinary Jobs, we're going to do it. Okay. Yes.
Fantastic.
Carry on.
So I get them all their stuff. We log into Zoom the next day. We do the stuff. And my 11-year-old at the time was working our dog, Captain Love, who she named when she was 3, which is a very uncomfortable thing to yell at the dog park, Captain Love, come. But she loves her dog, and that's his name. Every vet loves it. But he, I think, was one of the oldest dogs in this study. He was 11, or he's 11 now, so he was
Okay.
10. And my daughter, I think, was the youngest participant in this study at age 11. And then the other dogs were all under the age of 6. So we went through the pairing process. So for any of your listeners who have done scent work, we went through the regular process of introducing an odor. For those who didn't, I even have like a little YouTube channel that has exactly how I taught students to find vanilla on a Q-tip for COVID. So I will happily send that along, and people can just watch it for free, because it's just such a fun thing to do. You basically put whatever it is that you want them to find in a box with some of their food. You could do this at breakfast. Put it in this box with food, and you unfortunately call it the hot box. I didn't name it. Then you have these other boxes that are cold, and those never get odor or food in those boxes. The dog walks over, they smell their food. They're like, hey, there's food in here. Can I get into it? You open it, they eat it, but they're smelling the odor of the thing in the box. Lather, rinse, repeat. And then as they get better at learning the game, you take some of the food out each trial. And then they're just looking for that odor. And then you're reinforcing. Then you're giving them the thing instead of having the thing accessible.
When you reinforce, are you reinforcing to mouth with food? Are you using a toy, or are you reinforcing to where the odor is?
So I usually reinforce to where the odor is, because eventually, like in the case of these dogs, we would take that mesh with the dead fly eggs, and we would hide it places. So when the dog found it and located it, we would feed at the source of the odor. That's a very good question. And so these dogs all understood the game. When you're first learning this kind of thing, it can take a couple of weeks for the dogs to really get it and be pretty capable doing it without having bait in the box, without having food in that box. But these dogs have been doing it for years, with one exception. The separation anxiety dog, his name was Woody. He had only been doing this for about 3 months. All of the other dogs in the study have been doing it for 3 years or more.
They've been doing it with vanilla and other scents?
Yep. Vanilla, clove, birch, all of the oils, anise. Yep. And then we would do, some of them have done sandalwood. We would just get creative at that point and just like introduce new odors. But I like to think of their brain as a Rolodex. So we're not telling them find birch, find anise, find clove, find dead flies. We just use this cue, find it. And for these dogs, because we work in behavior, we never use the F word in vain. Find it always means there's something to find.
Right.
But when you're working operationally or out in the field or in search and rescue or in conservation work or in invasive work, sometimes you send them out, you say, find it, and there's nothing to find. So if you think about a police dog and you send them in it for a drug bust and there's no drugs, that dog is, they are trained to also sometimes not get a win. That's not the case in the behavior work that I do with these dogs. So there were some cases where they would get incredibly frustrated because they had never been trained to that level of specificity. We would call that a blank in these. So there would be nothing for them to find. So we actually had to teach them to start to tell us that there's nothing here instead of just saying, find it, and then having them get really mad about it. So that was one of the challenges in this, but we didn't get to that until much later. So we did this pairing thing, and then when they had to take what's called their odor recognition test, so we would have 6 boxes out, and 5 of them had things. There was a blank box, there was a mesh without dead flies, so that way we could tell if they're looking for the metal or the dead flies, the mesh with the dead flies, a handful of dirt, a handful of grass, and the rubber glove that we had to use to like move all of this stuff to make sure we weren't transferring our own odor onto the mesh. And then the dogs had to tell us which one had the dead fly eggs in the satchel. Funny story, our odor recognition test also happened during a snowstorm. It was an ice storm that took out power for almost all of southern Maine where we are.
Wow.
And so many of us didn't have heat or flushable water or potable water. My freezer went out and I have to keep these flies cold. So I just like hopped them into the snow in the hopes that they would just stay cold. So when we had to do our test, we have no access to grass, and the researchers needed us to have a box of grass in it. So my assistant and I went outside with these heavy duty staplers, and we're hammering under inches of ice to try to pull like the saddest dead grass you've ever seen.
It's just getting better and better, Melissa. Oh my.
And I just kept thinking, like, Florida doesn't have to deal with this. Like, why? Why did we think this was a good idea in the winter? I will never know.
But you made it work.
And we did.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I didn't know how challenging citizen science would be. Like, I thought, oh, we're helping the environment, we're doing this thing. But then being in this study for all 6 of us, we realized how serious and how hard and how grueling of a schedule this was. And while we were doing this, we realized that they had given us 14 weeks to do a series of 3 tests. That first one is the odor recognition test, where they had to pass 80% of a 10 trial. So they would have to go to the boxes 10 times and tell us accurately 10 times. They could miss 2 and still pass. And if they failed, they had 2 more tries. So we could test them 3 times. All of our dogs passed on this within 1 or 2 tries. So I was really proud of them.
Great.
Then we had to do a field test. So we had like 5 of those, like the satchels. So we had to put them outside in the woods. I believe it was an 88 by 88 foot area. And so some of our dogs, again, pet dogs with behavior issues, we actually had to set up 2 tests for the field test. The first one was in my yard, and the other was in the woods behind my house, because we had one dog that was so fixated on squirrels, she couldn't cope in the field. So she could only do the woods. And then I had other dogs who were afraid of the woods, like they read Little Red Riding Hood and were too scared or something. I don't know. So they wouldn't go in the woods. So we had to have 2 different tests for these dogs. But all the dogs who passed the field test, who tried for the field test, passed. And then the last one was just kind of collecting additional data. And this is the last piece that we had to give, the last bit of data we had to give to the researchers. And again, where we live and comedy of errors, every other team across the country had a representative from the universities come out and help them with this last test. We live in southern Maine. Maine is called vacation land.
Yes. Nobody's there in the winter time apart from the people who live there.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. But in the summer, everybody's
there.
Yeah. Everyone. And guess who can't get a hotel? And guess who can't get here to test these dogs? So I had mentioned to the researchers, I'm like, look, some days we have 100 degrees here and it is not safe to send the dogs out. And other days this summer has been unusually wet. We haven't been able to get them outside in the torrential downpours. And if you are able to get a hotel here, it's going to cost thousands of dollars a night. So what do I do? So she talked me through how to do the last test. And I think we were the only team that never saw a representative from the research team.
Wow, you are the little engine that could. I mean, you really are. You guys everything is against you. Really,
That's kind of what it felt like.
Yeah. And so, but you're finding ways to kind of combat it. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to hear what happened next. Okay. Have you discovered the completely redesigned positively.com yet? When you create a free account at positively.com, you can enroll in fun, accessible, and free online courses to help you and your dog live your best lives together. Join the community completely dedicated to supercharging your relationship with your dog at positively.com today. That's positively.com. All right, I'm back with Melissa McCue-McGrath. We're just having the most amazing conversation about teaching this raggle-taggle mob of dogs with all different kind of issues to detect the odor of lanternfly eggs.
Mm-hmm.
We're to the point now where the representative from the university cannot come to Maine because it's not snowing. Now it's hot, it's wet, and there's nowhere to stay because everybody goes on vacations in Maine. If you live on the East Coast, you kind of know that. What then happened? This was your last test.
This was the last test. So we were able to get 3 dogs to do the test, to get 4 trials of the test. So one dog, Cammy, ran it twice in 2 different locations. And this last test was actually just to see how far away from a midpoint can these dogs detect lanternfly. So we would put out 5 or 6 satchels of the dead fly eggs, and we would walk down a straight path. And so the dog's nose goes up, they locate satchel 1, we bring them back to center to that path, and then we keep walking forward. So we're not letting them do a grid search, and we're not letting them just kind of follow their nose wherever. We are identifying, yes, we think they have odor here. I'm going to follow the dog and then alert if they find it. And if they're just kind of lost, we bring them back to that path and just keep going forward. I believe that was a 45-foot march. And you're not going down and back. You're just going down one direction. And again, it's just to see how far away from center can the dog detect it. So that was their 3rd and final test.
And you have a long line on your dog. So you are following. This isn't a dog that is just off the lead and just
correct,
sniffing, willy-nilly. You've got the dog on the long line. You're following the dog. And then you see a change of behavior when they catch that odor.
Mm-hmm. And then we follow our dog, and that's what operational and real working dog people would do. But we're watching these pet dogs, and we're watching these pet dogs who, and this is my favorite part, when we teach in a classroom setting, all the work is on the dog. The dog finds the box, you're following the dog. The dog indicates in whatever way they like. And then the handler only says alert. So they're not confirming. They're not doing additional work. It's all the dog. You raise your hand as the handler, and the judge or the teacher says yes or no. You got it right or you got it wrong. In the field, what we realized was that this truly was a partnership in a way that we don't do in classes. There was one test that I think exemplifies this perfectly. It was we have this tree in our woods. It's kind of lobbed off a little bit. It had kind of a flat top. So I put some of the fly eggs on that in a jar, and there's trees all around. And I think 5 dogs came into practice that day, and all 5 dogs. So the tree is here. There's all the dogs alerted on the next tree over. The
'Cause
wind was carrying it
the odor
and
was
collecting the odor here.
there you
So
go.
the dogs all alerted in the same way at the same place. So we knew it was wind, but like the owners at that point, instead of just saying alert and taking the dog's word for it, they all then had to start looking. And then they had to find it, and all of them turned 180 degrees and then were able to call alert because they got a visual. And I really liked that partnership. I really liked being able to encourage my students to take what they've learned, either behaviorally or through this process with the scientists, to be able to take it to the next level and be a true partner with their dog. And I think that was the coolest part of the whole process for us, was being able to really work with them instead of like just let them do all the work, or kind of put that burden on their shoulders. That I think was the coolest part.
Yeah, and you know what? I think it illustrates a really important point that, you are doing this outside where you can't control the direction of the wind. I
Nope.
mean, you can try once you know the direction of the wind, you can try and position your dog in a way that might be easier for your dog, but odor pools in certain areas. And we also, when I was filming with Guardians of the Night, and we were with the police dogs for 5 years, we saw how odor pools, not just outside. So, for example, if you're going down a road, the odor was always pooling where the road meets the curb, depending on what direction the wind was going. And obviously, all the officers would carry kind of a little talcum powder kind of squeeze tube, so that they could see what direction the wind was going. And then inside, what I think people don't realize, especially here in the United States, in hot places where we have air conditioning, the air conditioning can really mess with an odor. It can really just put the odor everywhere. But the dogs are really good at locating, and sometimes they'd be locating on the ceiling, because all of that odor would be going up to the ceiling because the air conditioning was pushing it there.
Yes.
And we know that hot air rises, don't we? And we know that air is different in your house during the day, and it kind of warms up and goes up your walls and pools on the ceiling. But it's knowing all of that. So it's not just teaching your dog, oh, you've got to find this odor. It's how the wind moves that odor and how it pools it. I mean, how difficult was that for you?
It was not easy. It was something that when we started this, I told all of my students, before we go forward with this, y'all know I don't know what I'm doing, right? We're going to do this together. And they all still put their hands up, and we all figured it out on our own. And of course I was reading all the books, and my dad was a corrections officer, so he had a lot of cop friends. So when I was a kid, I got to watch them train these police dogs, and I've always been fascinated with how dogs can see so many things that we just can't. And in scent work, when I'm in my training room, I have a pretty good idea how odor moves through there. After working there for 3 years, seeing how dogs move, lighting incense to watch how the smoke moves. Is it rising? Is it falling? Is it doing this? Is it doing that? If I put the fans on in the room, what does it do? So I feel like I have a pretty good idea how odor moves in that space. But then there are days where it's like maybe a workman comes in and puts in an out vent in the middle of my room, and I don't notice it. And then all of my dogs are behaving differently one day, and I'm like, this is not what happened. And then one of my students happened to be a contractor. He goes, that out vent. So I was like, oh, that's why they're all running this way. So even with the best laid intentions in a controlled setting, the dogs are the only ones who really are experiencing the odor as it's moving through the room. And I can lay odor, and I can do whatever I can to make it a solvable puzzle for them, making it different degrees of difficulty depending on the dog who's in front of me. But I'm guessing. I cannot see how this odor really is moving. I'm guessing based on past history and odor theory and things like that, but I'm going to sometimes get it wrong. And the dogs will always tell me. And when we go outside, And it just kind of felt like it was like, well, let's just see what happens. We would test the wind. I would set a thing. I'd let it sit for 20 minutes. We'd bring the dogs out and the wind shifts. And we're like, or
Yep.
it would be swirling, or, something would come through, or like a hawk would come by and startle the dogs. And then the dogs can't function because they're behavior cases. So we had a lot of variables that we could not control for. But it was such a fantastic experience to watch in my heart, these 5 students push through and find ways to make it work for them and their dogs. At the end of the day, we did have 2 dogs have to drop out of the study. One for emotional reasons. The day of one of those tests during the ice storm, we had actually moved location to do the test. We had, again, no flushing water, no heat. So we moved location. My friend Nancy opened up her studio, which was so nice of her to do. And it was warm and we could get water. But these dogs, some of them had never been in a city. And so while she was doing her test, a fire truck went by and then we couldn't get her. Yep. She fell completely apart. And we're like, okay, we'll get her back to the classroom in a few days. We'll let her decompress. We'll bring her back to the classroom. She'll be fine. The owner came in tears and was like, I have to pull her. She won't sniff for it anymore. She won't work for it. It's supposed to be fun for her. And I get it. And I will always advocate for my student, like who is advocating for their dog. Well, so we just put cheese in the box and had her find cheese. So she's a certified cheese hunter.
Good. Well, you know what? I mean, that just shows you just that experience. I mean, it could have been a multiple experiences that we humans weren't experienced, but that one fire truck was that was it.
Yeah,
but it just shows how something can contaminate and can set dogs back. But you've got, okay, so you've done all this. What is the end result of all of this? How is this going to help stop this invasive species?
Good question. So the researchers discovered that absolutely, yes, we can train pet dogs to find these invasive species. There are a few things that they still need to sort out, like field fitness. Like these dogs, this ragtag group, might never be field fit to actually do this, but the concept was proven, and that was the part that they were trying to get. My favorite piece of this was in some of the groups across the country, pugs outperform German shepherds.
I mean, I've had some incredible pugs. Incredible pugs. Their noses are just, I mean, you're like, I don't understand how this is anatomically possible with your squish nose, but you are an unbelievable odor hunter. You are just you. And so that does not surprise me.
Yeah, isn't that cool? And so, the German shepherds lost to pugs in a couple of these groups, and that there was a 40% attrition rate in the dogs. So they started off with 180 dogs and 150 people. I believe we were across 18 states. And we were the only ones in Maine. There was only one other group in all of New England, and they were in Rhode Island. Some of these dogs were going out on their field tests where they were looking for the dead fly eggs and were alerting on live eggs. So that answered
on like regular fly eggs.
Lanternfly eggs.
Lanternfly eggs. Oh my gosh.
They found, yes. So that was the other piece they were trying to figure out. So that third test that we took, there were 2 variations of that. If you happen to be a handler or a trainer in the area where there is spotted lanternfly invasion, they wanted to see if the dogs could find live eggs. So they would take those dogs into areas where they knew there was invasion and then send the dogs in. Can they find it? For us here in Maine, we don't have it yet. It's predicted to be here in 2026. But while I was on, you'll appreciate this being in media with like cameras and stuff. I was on a news broadcast with my dog live in studio.
Oh, that's always fun.
At that time, I know, right? And so we're in studio, and the reporter's like, it's in all these states, including New Hampshire. I had checked 2 days before. It was not New Hampshire. And then he put up this map from, USDA, and it had a mark in New Hampshire. And we're in southern Maine. We are 20 minutes from the New Hampshire border.
Whoa.
So I'm like, it will be here this year. I have no doubt it will be here this year. The spotted lanternfly can lay its eggs on cars, on playground equipment, on all these different things that I was telling you about at the beginning. And as I was saying before, tourists come here. This is like many people in the state of Maine will, they earn all of their money for the year during those 4 months of summer we have. And then everything closes down again. All of these cars from Indiana, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New York, New Jersey. Every time I see a car coming in with a different license plate, I'm going to be like, is that mud spatter, or is that going to be a problem?
Now you see, and then
will be here this year.
Yeah, they're gonna bring it to your state, and it was exactly like, I mean, you can the dogs that we filmed with that were finding invasive mussels and stopping them from coming into these lakes in Canada. All the boats were stopped before they went into the water and searched. These dogs searched these boats and the underside of these boats. And if there were any odor of those mussels, there had to be further investigation, and you were not allowed to put your boat in the water. That is something you can control, but you can't control people just driving in and out of your state. You can't.
And if you've ever been to Maine, we have one highway, and the only way in is over this one bridge that borders New Hampshire and Maine. It's a pretty big bridge. And if you live here, you always, like, you see welcome to Maine and everybody goes, yay, I'm home. Because it's usually a very long drive to get there. We are the only state in the contiguous US that has one border, and that is New Hampshire. And so coming over that bridge, right, and there's no way to stop it. What we could conceivably do is get these dogs, or get other dogs, to sniff maybe some shipping containers coming in, things like that, or rest stops. But that would be, I think, a lot more intensive, and I would have to work with like operational handlers to do that. As far as these dogs, what we did was, at the end of the study, sorry, I had some seltzer. At the end of the study, I still had all these satchels. So I now have 15 dogs at the Animal Welfare Society in Kennebunk, including the 6 that did the study, and including June, who came back to classes and is now the dog that I use to see how odor is moving. She's one of the more reliable dogs on spotted lanternfly. So she came back. The one that got scared, she came back.
She did. Oh, she did. So good.
And Captain, my dog, who we had to pull for medical reasons, also came back. So the 6 dogs in the study all are finding them with over 80% certainty. Wow. When they are in the classroom, they are finding it with 100% certainty.
Wow.
And then we added every single one of my level 3 scent work classes are now on spotted lanternfly. So we have 15 dogs in Kennebunk who can find the invasion. So if we're going for a walk in the woods and somebody feels like maybe there's something here, we could ask our dogs on their walk. I don't think I would send them in to do a 5-acre search, but what I could do is, hey, vineyard owner who's worried about his grapes, do you want our dogs just to do a quick pass? And we can send those dogs in. The dogs who would be comfortable in a vineyard. And then I will send June in to go find the right cheese to pair with our wine that they give us, maybe. I have a lot of friends in this industry, and in the UK, a friend of mine, he has dogs that find mold, so mold in houses. And actually what they do is they go into a lot of the big stately homes, and stately homes in the UK, we're talking about the Downton Abbeys, right? The huge, big, majestic houses that are now, most of them are owned by the National Trust or English Heritage and open to the public. It's the way that they keep these houses alive and still standing, is to have people come visit them and visit the gardens and pay to have that done. So you can become a member of the National Trust or English Heritage, or there's other organizations too. Anyway, his job is to go in, or his job was to go in and to find mold, especially black mold, in these places. And so Yeah.
He was going everywhere. I mean, what a job to have. And he was finding a lot, of course, in these places, a lot of
Yeah.
mold, but these dogs, I mean, we just scratching the surface of what these dogs can do. And I love the fact that you are preparing. Now, what happens if you do find that they have come to Maine? What do you do
That,
then? What happens then?
that's a great question. Our best theory and our best guess is that we would have to contact an extension school. And also, I would let the researchers know, hey, we now have it in Maine because they have all the contacts in all of these different states that I might not know where to go. So I would probably contact the University of Maine Extension to see if they can start maybe helping us out.
Right.
And I'm sure this is on their radar because they are also dealing with other invasions as well, like the emerald ash borer. We have this thing called the brown-tailed moth, which is like this. It's actually as advertised. It's a little brown moth that's got stuff. But the thing with that is that it's got these hairs that are toxic. And so when they die and their hair kind of fiddles around, the hair can cause rashes on people.
Huh.
And my nephew actually had to go to the hospital for it. So the dogs, we could take maybe the emerald ash borer eggs or the body of an emerald ash borer, train them to that. We could do some stuff with the spotted lanternfly, but it's not going to be all encompassing. We won't be able to send the dogs in after brown-tailed moth because we don't want their noses
No, we
getting,
don't want
that's a bad idea. So there are
yeah.
limitations to what we can do with the dogs. But my hope is that once we're able to maybe work with some of these extension schools, that we might be able to have a better plan going forward for when it does get here.
Amazing. I mean, that is true. I would just say congratulations to you. It truly should be made into a movie. But what you've done and with difficult circumstances, because obviously, yeah, the weather there is definitely kind of extreme. That
Yep.
people in other maybe parts of the country or in other countries that are listening to this don't truly understand, but it can be well extreme there. That you've done this now. Just changing tack a little bit, you are a faculty
Sure.
advisor for the Victoria Stilwell Academy,
I
VSA.
am.
And I asked you before, you've had over 30 students since you
Yeah, I think I've
started the
had like
faculty.
38 or 39 students.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness. Can you tell everybody what a faculty advisor is? And B, why do you do it? And how does it help the students?
Sure. I love teaching. I hope anybody who hears today's episode just hears how passionate I am about just teaching and talking with people because that is the biggest part of this job. Like I love animals, but I love people. And my favorite part of the job is teaching my future colleagues, and teaching kids about the work that I do. Actually, when you were talking about Tucker, the dog in Puget Sound, looking for whale scat, I use that dog when I go into classrooms and I'm like, you guys, these dogs find whale poop for science. And like,
Yeah.
I use these dogs to get them excited. So, um, these students really, they're so inspiring because like when I started, decades
Yeah,
ago,
it's all right. Hey, it's okay. We just got a lot of experience.
we've got this isn't gray. It's just wisdom streaks. So they, um, but when I started, actually we had two TV shows. Yours was one of them. And I didn't have accessibility to instructors. I didn't have accessibility. If there were programs for dog behavior, I didn't know where to find them. Like, so like in the 1990s and very early 2000s, there was nowhere for people like us to go.
No, they really weren't. Mm-mm.
And unless like there was like the Gene Donaldson Academy, or the Dog Training Academy in California, but at that time that was a 10-week program in California.
Yeah.
So if you live in Maine, you are leaving your pets behind for 10 weeks. It was not feasible for me at that time. Or at this time, truthfully. And we didn't have these accessible online programs. That was not a thing that existed. So in 2015, Lexnar,
Yes, no, yeah.
who I believe has changed her name, she called me. I have never met her. I just get this call. I'm making dinner for my infant at the time and me and my husband. And I'm talking. She's like, "Hi, this is Victoria Stilwell Academy." I'm like, "Excuse me, what?" like, and she said that she had a young lady named Zoe who is looking for a mentor at the time because we didn't have faculty advisors yet. So a mentor and a mentee, and you would be partnered in person with a student. And they didn't have any DSA people in the area, but they looked at me and another person from New England Dog Training Club, where I was a training director at the time, and one of my colleagues there. And we jumped on with our CPDT certifications to help mentor these students. And I just remember when Zoe went, I believe she went to Georgia, and came back for her first intensive. She had a binder that was like the size of a
Huge.
toaster.
Yes. Yes. That's what we did
And
then. I mean, it's
yeah,
a lot, right? Yeah.
but I just remember like looking at all of these other programs and had been a person who had been teaching at that point for 15 years and looking at this binder and just being so in awe of the way that things were written out, that this was truly for a student. Like it was inclusive. It was vast. Like the information was all solid, but it was digestible for a student. It wasn't talking down to them and it wasn't talking over them. And I, like between classes, I would be reading through her note, like her book. And then we would drive to the next thing and she would do her program with me. So when she graduated, Allie asked if I wanted another student and I said yes. And then I just kept saying yes. Like, and then 2020 and you guys happen to already be looking for online information, like having that option. So you guys were ahead of the curveball, which I
We
thought was
really
really
were.
cool.
We'd put it
Because when you,
online, I think the year before.
mm-hmm,
So maybe 2 years before, the year before, it all
it was,
runs into, all the years run into each other. But we were certainly up
yeah,
and running in 2020, so that when COVID hit,
yeah,
we had a ton of students apply and to come through VSA because it was accessible and we had
right.
faculty advisors.
Yes. And the best part about the way that you guys did it, because you were ahead of it, you guys had worked with my degree is in psychology and in learning theory. So like I completely appreciated the fact that things online were in 5 to 8 minute chunks instead of a 1 hour lecture watching a Zoom class for each module. And I was just watching and going, this is so smart. This is so necessary. And then watching all the other organizations take trying to figure it out on the fly, whereas you guys had already done it and did it correctly, I thought. And it was just so brilliant. And Allie called me and I just never left.
No, we love the fact that we don't want you to ever leave, ever leave. You have to carry on. But yet, every student now gets a faculty advisor. So, and I think, people are like, well, is the course in person? It's online. The dog trainer course is an online course.
Yes.
It's just you can add an in-person track. So that means more cyber classes, online cyber classes, online intensives, but they're live, and then you come for a week with me. However, everybody, whether you're just doing, you're doing the dog trainer course without the in-person add-on track, everybody gets a faculty advisor. So you have somebody that you meet, up to 26 hours per course. And normally we find that students actually don't need all those 26 hours, but your faculty advisor is with you every step of the way. And you can use them as much or as little as you want. You need them for assessments, etc. But there's somebody that you meet with and online, but it's live, and that, that helps guide you through. And you are one of them. You are an absolute treasure for us. But that's what our faculty advisors do. And we very much appreciate that because our students, well, we couldn't do it. I don't think that the course would be as good as it is without faculty advisors.
I agree. I think one of the things that makes this such a good resource for students or aspiring students who want to be dog trainers, or even just work in an animal related industry and have this knowledge. Having a person that you can just email and say, I have a question. Can you point me in the direction of a reputable resource? I have some students that really like a lot of hand holding and have a lot of questions and just really like having a lot of in-person, like live conversation. And I have some students who are like, hands off, I'll see you for my assessments. And I'm like, cool. Do you have any questions? Nope. Got it. Cool. Like, so like as a faculty advisor, see all these different learners and just like the dogs in front of us, right? There are learners. These students are my learners. And I am so happy whenever I get a new one because I'm like, yay,
yeah,
that's my future colleague.
Oh my gosh. Well, you're just divine. And Melissa, thank you so much for joining our podcast today and for talking about such a fascinating subject. I absolutely love it. And I'm excited to see kind of more of the work that you do. Now, if people want to find out more about you, where would they go?
They can go to melissamcque-mcgrath.com, or they'll find me on Instagram or whatever. I'm the only one, so it's not that hard to find me. I do have a book coming out at the end of the year about if you it's called Misadventures of the World's Okayest Dog Trainer.
The World's Okayest Dog Trainer.
And
love it.
It's through 5M Publishing in the UK. They wanted it, and I thought that was so sweet. There's going to be a lot of U's in there that I am not used to, like the behavior.
It's much better than that. I
agree. And but it's all about the things they don't tell you when you want to work with animals. Mm-hmm. So like how many times like you have to explain humpers to a class of 10-year-olds, but also like behavioral euthanasia. And so like, and everything in between, like having a client say he's jumpy and then you go in and you discover you're in a hoarding house. Like, what do you do? Like, these are not things that are covered in most courses. So the weird, the funny, the embarrassing, and the gut wrenching, and the joy of this job that nobody could have prepared me for, and I know certainly couldn't have prepared you for when you started this either.
No. I remember that one of the first clients that I had, when I was really seriously full-time dog training, I went into, had my training school, but it wasn't a school. It was not a physical school, but it was Dog Trainers of New York. And I went and did one-to-ones. That I went into a household with a very, very large pit bull who was actually rather glorious, but was not happy with the husband. And there was a reason for it. I won't go into detail, but that was one of my first major behavioral cases in Manhattan. And that's tough. From then on, I was like, oh, okay, this is what the industry is. Because before I'd been working in London and I'd been dog walking and dog sitting and doing dog training for my clients. And I knew my clients and it was much easier but it was an absolute baptism of fire when I started my one-to-one business in Manhattan. Didn't I just see life everywhere? Like Manhattan is very different depending on what neighborhood you're in. But I saw life, and I also saw so many different dogs and so many different issues. And I also, I knew, because as a dog walker and also as a dog sitter, people open up to you.
Yes.
But as a dog trainer, they open up to you even more. So I realized that, and I'm not a trained counselor, I'm not a human psychologist, I'm not. But what I realized was that I'm that person that needs to sit there and listen.
Yes.
And that I listen and that I can give advice when it includes the dog.
Correct.
So I'm not going to be a marriage counselor, but I can, if it pertains to the dog, then I can. And so I found that very quickly. And that's why, as you say, that this profession is so amazing in so many ways, because it's so fascinating and so interesting. Because
It is
one
a
day is
study in human behavior.
right, right,
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
It's so bizarre. Anyway, thank you so much, Melissa, for joining me, and I'm really excited that you came on the podcast to share your journey.
Thank you so much for having me. You've been such an inspiration to me in my training journey. So it's really the pleasure is mine for getting to be able to spend the time with you. Thank you.
You are very welcome. Well, that's it, folks, for another podcast. I love the different subjects that we have on here. How fascinating is that? If you have a pet dog and you think, potentially, maybe my dog can do that. I'm sure there are some great classes in your area. Of course, keep it positive. But I'm so glad that you could join us today on this podcast. And you all take care. And I will see you again on another podcast. Take care. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Victoria Stilwell's Positively podcast. For Victoria's online dog training courses, more information, and helpful dog training tips, visit Victoria's official website at positively.com. Get connected on Facebook, Instagram, and other social media as Victoria Stilwell, and follow her on Twitter at Victoria S. Learn to become a professional dog trainer with the Victoria Stilwell Academy at vsdogtrainingacademy.com. And be sure to tune in next time as Victoria helps you and your dog live your best life together, positively.